Hello there, I'm Noel Hacegaba, Deputy Executive Director of the Port of Long Beach. Welcome to Supply Chain Insight, where we explore the latest trends, issues, and news in the supply chain with top industry leaders, experts, and influencers. Our objective is to bring you the insight you need to help you keep your cargo moving. Today's business executives expect a lot from their supply chains: efficiency, velocity, flexibility, cost management, and operational excellence. Supply Chain Insight brings the supply chain to you, one segment at a time, to explore new approaches and innovative solutions that will help you in the Port of Long Beach deliver greater value to our customers and partners. And speaking of our partners, today's episode highlights the critical role that the railroads play in moving cargo from the ports to key markets across the country. Now, to illustrate this, nearly 40% of all U.S. import loads arrive through the San Pedro Bay Ports Complex and eventually reach all 435 congressional districts in the U.S. Much of that cargo gets there by rail. As chairman of the board of the Intermodal Association of North America, I can tell you that intermodal keeps cargo moving and the economy going. And to tell us more about intermodal and the state of the U.S. rail system in general, our special guest today is Kenny Rocker, Executive Vice President of Marketing and Sales at Union Pacific Railroad. Kenny is responsible for Union Pacific's three major business units: bulk, industrial, and premium, and also leads UP's marketing and sales operations, commercial strategy, and the company's Mexico business. A respected railroad industry veteran, Kenny first joined UP in 1994 and has served in various leadership positions leading up to his current role. Kenny, it's a pleasure to have you on Supply Chain Insight. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Noel.
I'm just going to dive into the first question. Kenny, like ports, rail movements have long been viewed as a reliable barometer of the health of the overall economy. What is the state of the U.S. rail system from your vantage point? And what do you think this tells us about the economy and where it may be headed?
Let's open up and just talk about international intermodal and where it stands. And I'll tell you, we see e-commerce still very strong right now. Retail sales appear to be strong, and so we're watching that closely. And as you look across the supply chain, there's still tight truck capacity. And so that's encouraging. We've been fortunate enough to have a few business development wins too. I think the real question is international intermodal traffic in the future is still a little uncertain, but you asked me how it's looking today, and I'll tell you that it looks pretty strong and on solid footing. On domestic intermodal, I tell you the same thing. Tight truck capacity, the demand is there. We're seeing a lot of customers asking to move more products on us. We're filling out capacity in many places, so that's encouraging. Now, outside of the intermodal markets, we think about our bulk business, and I'll tell you, our bulk business has been driven by coal. So believe it or not, coal is not dead. High natural gas prices have really spurred a strong demand in our coal markets. Our grain business has been really strong the last couple years, and this year is no different, which we're encouraged by, both domestically and also for export. When grain is strong as it is, so is fertilizer. And so our export potash has been strong. And then into our industrial markets, boy, we're really seeing a really solid market in terms of metals. A lot of these metals are going into construction of cars also. Lumber has been strong, rock, aggregate, cement. Aside from what I call crude oil and some of the petrol markets, those businesses have been pretty strong. So we'll see where it goes, but I'm pretty bullish on the overall market.
Kenny, it sounds like all signs pointing in the right direction. That's very encouraging to hear, and I can tell you that here at the ports, we're busier than ever, so it corresponds with what you're telling us. Speaking of that, we're seeing here at the ports elevated IPI volumes and dwell times in the port. Average dwell in the San Pedro Bay Ports Complex, for example, is at around 9 days. What is Union Pacific doing to help move these boxes to inland destinations?
Yeah, and I do want to humbly acknowledge here, our service is not where we want it to be. The encouraging thing is that, from the lows of earlier this year, we've seen our velocity increase, car velocity increase 6%. We've seen our train speed increase 4%. So we feel really good about the direction we're going. Some of the things we're specifically doing that you want to know about is that we're going out and hiring. And I want to give you an update on where we are with that.
Please.
Right now, we have a little bit over 500 what we call trainmen in training right now. And so that's encouraging. We have graduated over 300 of these individuals that will be actually running our trains. And so we're seeing them come onto our property, and that will also help. We've done things like adjusted our transportation plans so that we can have a more consistent, reliable service for you out there and for our customers out there. We've inserted more locomotives into the network. So we're really seeing those metrics improve, like I mentioned earlier. But behind the scenes, what we're doing is really the nuts and bolts around making sure we have the crews and the locomotives to get in and give our mutual customers the service that they expect.
Well, Kenny, we appreciate everything that UP is doing. You guys are really stepping up to help us move these intermodal boxes out of our port terminals as quickly as possible. You know, it's interesting, during this time of the supply chain disruption, you look at a port, you look at the ships at anchor, and you look at containers piling up, and it's easy to look from the outside in and say, hey, that's a port issue. Just like it's easy to look at an inland rail yard and say it's a rail issue, but as you described, there are a number of factors that are at play, and certainly having an adequate labor force is critical, as well as having equipment, right? Not just on the rail side, but having access to trucks and to chassis. And with that in mind, what else can the customer and or the ports do to help alleviate the IPI backlog in the inland rail yards and consequently at the ports?
Well, that's a multifaceted question, so I'll take it from a different
Please.
perspective. First thing, everything that you all are doing around the supply chain information highway is spot on. I mean, you talk about supply chain visibility. That's so critical. At some parts of the supply chain, we have visibility, and what you all are doing at the Port of Long Beach really will put it all together so we can see it inside the terminals and see it on an end-to-end basis. So just great job there.
Thank you.
I'll tell you, on the rail end, when we think about our rail network, it's just one part, it's just one component of the overall supply chain. And so as we look at the BCOs that are inland, we really be encouraged if we could see the turn times improve at our inland terminals. I'd actually, as you think about visibility, I'd actually be encouraged if we could also see visibility to the actual BCOs that are going into the inland terminals. We've seen on the container side, the dwell there really increase significantly, almost double. And even on the chassis side, we've seen that increase by a couple days. So, hey, any improvements there would be much appreciated. So you heard about what the rail is doing and all the resources that we're inserting. Those are some other things that we could do from a supply chain perspective to make sure on the back end at the inland ports that the warehouses and distribution centers are able to take in the product.
Yeah, you're spot on again, Kenny. You know, there's this old adage, right? It takes a village. In this case, it takes the entire supply chain, everyone doing their part to get those containers moving and get that constant motion that we all need to keep our economy moving forward. You hit on something that's very critical. One of the glaring gaps that has emerged throughout the disruption is the lack of information sharing. And we appreciate Union Pacific's partnership as we continue to move forward our digital initiative, the Supply Chain Information Highway, which aligns very well with everything that UP is doing to address that issue. We appreciate that very much. You know, Kenny, rail is a core value of the Port of Long Beach, and a centerpiece of our industry-leading CapEx program is our Pier B on-dock rail support yard, which will dramatically increase our IPI on-dock capacity over the years. This will enable us to continue to handle record volumes in the years ahead. Tell us why rail is a key solution to moving consumer goods today and in the years ahead.
Well, I mean, you hit it on the head. I mean, we're excited that Union Pacific is one of the only near dock rail providers in that area, and we're talking about over 600,000 lifts between the ports that are there. Set all of that aside from a service perspective. Look, rail is, in terms of, if you want an environmentally friendly way to get from point A to point B, we can reduce greenhouse gases by up to 75%. And so we look at that when you look at it in terms of the rail network, the consistency, the environmental impact. That's just a lot of value that we can bring to the supply chain. And we're talking about a global supply chain that we're looking at.
That's fantastic. And Kenny, the figures you cited about the sustainability advantages of rail, music to our ears, right? The very first green port, and we're certainly proud of that. San Pedro Bay is a cornerstone of UP's network. What can you tell us about the projects that UP has lined up to support growth and network fluidity for the international market, and the role of technology that will play in that?
Yeah, so first of all, when you think about it, we are looking at the IPI shipments, and it's encouraging that we are seeing those gradually increase. And then in the areas where they aren't, what we are doing is we're creating products to where we can capture those containers. So our Inland Empire product, for example, we've spent quite a bit of capital there, and we're seeing containers move out of there today. So as you think about your business, what's coming on to your port, clearly we want it to go on dock. And if it doesn't, we have a solution for customers to move out of the Inland Empire. The other part of that is we've inserted ourselves into the St. Paul, Minneapolis area. That's a new service product that we'd like to offer customers in the marketplace. And so we're excited to do that. We have product going in there today. We're expanding that. It'll be up to 100,000 lifts. And so as you think about that, that just gives customers coming through the port of Long Beach optionality. One of the other things that we want to do to make IPI shipments more attractive is the investment that we've made at our Global 4, we call it G4 terminal, where we have an ag export terminal there so that our customers can move loaded into Chicago and then put grain on there and move back to the port loaded. So we think that gives a lot of options to our customers. So really just investing heavily for that. Now, you talked about technology, and I talked about what we want to do with you all with the supply chain information highway. And what I tell you is that we've just been overzealous about our APIs with our customers. And we have a number of international intermodal customers that are hooked up with our IPI capabilities. And that just gives all of us, the port, the rail, the customer, real-time feedback. And it allows us to have a conversation about what's going on. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, Kenny, that's fantastic. And I know UP has been on the leading edge of addressing that glaring gap in information sharing by leveraging technology. And what I like to say about technology, that in and of itself, it's simply a tool, but it becomes a solution when you integrate it into the operations. And that's precisely what our respective organizations are working towards. So we appreciate what you guys are doing in that regard. Kenny, at the Port of Long Beach, we recognize the value of thinking outside the docks and looking outside the docks and looking at the container movement system, across the supply chain. And this includes looking at land outside of the port to improve velocity and enhance efficiency. As we build out our Pier Beyond Dock rail facility, we're looking at strategic points across the rail system to maximize our investments in on-dock here at the port. And we recently entered into a partnership with Union Pacific and the Utah Inland Port Authority to move more containers to the Intermountain region via rail. How do partnerships like these help shippers and, as you pointed out earlier, exporters and the broader supply chain?
Yeah, it just gives more optionality. And that's what a lot of our mutual customers want, is optionality. And it gives them efficiency. It gives them a loaded ride back, which again makes us all competitive from a cost structure. It's in place. We're excited about it, Noel. We have other products I talked about, G4. Haven't talked about Calipatria, where we move hay back.
Mm.
Everyone knows about plastic pellets that move back from Dallas back into your ports. And so we just have to come up with solutions. And we've been excited that we've been able to give those solutions to our customers.
That's terrific, Kenny. We look forward to continuing to work with you and the Utah Inland Port Authority to really max out what we can do by leveraging that hub there in Salt Lake City. Well, Kenny, I wish I had a lot more time because I have a lot more questions, but you've been extremely thorough and generous with your time. And Kenny, I just want to thank you again for joining us to share your insight and outlook for the U.S. rail system and the supply chain. To our valued audience, thanks again for joining us, and we'll be seeing you again soon for another episode of Supply Chain Insight brought to you by the Port of Choice, the Port of Long Beach.